I'm now going to introduce a panel. Two of our speakers, Adrian Black, who you heard from earlier, and Molly O'Brien, on cost and budgeting, which is a key issue for you guys, because we want to make sure that you haven't got nasty surprises, and they'll talk about various aspects of that. Molly's a Californian attorney and has been working in surrogacy since 2005. She's very well regarded in the industry, and she came and first involved herself with us in our Australian conference earlier this year, and she's a delightful lady. You learn a lot from her. Adrian, you've already met, so I'm going to introduce her. Please welcome these guys up to the stage. They're going to actually share this presentation. Molly and Adrian, welcome.
Thank you, Sam. Good morning, everyone. Hi. She gets to start, so I just get to wake you up.
All right, so we're going to have a little discussion about... wait, we need to
Whatever
rearrange.
gets to click.
You can click.
I
Okay.
should not be in charge of electronics.
Okay, so I'll click. So we're going to talk a little bit about the...
Great. So just so you know a little bit, I used to work for a surrogacy agency myself, so I can talk a lot about like what agency costs you should expect as well, on top of the legal stuff. So the first bucket of costs, because like Adrian was saying, there's costs that are going to be medical, there's costs that are going to be legal, there's costs that are going to be agency. So it's important to compartmentalize each thing. So we've got buckets up here, which is a wonderful visual for you. So the first thing here we have is the legal contracts between you and the donor or you and the surrogate. You should expect anywhere from $2,500 to $6,000. This is going to vary depending on the attorney and the level of service the attorney gives you. There's some attorneys out there who will just draft contracts and that's what you get. There's other attorneys who are going to do more things for you, such as reviewing the surrogate's insurance, helping you with other things along the way, reading agency retainer agreements. So talk to your attorney about what they offer and what you want to get out of the process. But that's a pretty good estimation right there. That's you next. Yep.
So the next bucket of cost is going to be the agency fees. There's kind of a general range of agency fees, and they start anywhere from about $10,000 to $12,000 and go up to $20,000 to $25,000, depending on the services that are offered by your agency. Some of those are full service. They're going to walk you through every step of the process. They're going to do a lot of hand holding. They're going to offer a lot of support to your surrogate. Some of them are kind of bare bones where maybe they're only matching you. So there's a lot of variety in there that's designed to meet different budgets. You're going to want to make sure and ask those questions. But in general, you're going to want to budget for $15,000 to $25,000. Surrogate compensation is also one of those big chunks of what you're going to be paying for. And it's important to know there's a lot of variation in this as well. That's going to be my theme for the show, obviously. There's a lot of variation. So the surrogate, there are two components really to compensation. There's base compensation, which is kind of a flat dollar amount. And then there are additional extras that are part of the compensation package. So the base compensation, depending on state, depending on experience, and several other factors, is going to range probably somewhere from $25,000 up to $40,000 or even a little higher. In addition to the base compensation, there are going to be that extras package. So that includes usually a monthly expense allowance that's meant to cover kind of the incidentals that are different because she's going through cycling, she's going through pregnancy. Maybe that means she's got to drink, Odwalla orange juice 3 times a day for 2 weeks because she's having the craving. So it's meant to kind of compensate for those things that are pregnancy related. There is usually a transfer fee and a cycling fee that come out. So when she starts meds, you can expect that there will be a fee there. And so let me back up. So expense allowance, usually $150 to $300 a month. The transfer fee is about $1,000 a month usually, but it could be as low as $500. It could go up to $1,500. It varies according to agency, location, those details. The start of meds fee and the cycling fee is usually between $350 and $1,000. It varies again. Maternity clothes come in, that's about $500 to $1,200 depending on whether she's somebody who has a professional job and she needs to have really nice clothes, or if she's carrying multiples. So you can expect to see a lower amount for a singleton, a higher amount for twins, of course. Support group meeting costs. Some agencies offer support groups throughout. Some offer counseling to the surrogate, but you can anticipate that there will definitely be a bit of money set aside so that the surrogate has psychological support throughout the process. And that could be $600, it could be $3,000. It depends on what's being offered to your surrogate. There's typically a twin fee. So if she's carrying multiples, it's usually $3,500 to about $5,000 per additional fetus. A C-section fee, again, about $3,500 to about $5,000. Lost wages, this is actually something that's one of those hot button topics. It's something you want to be really clear about. Lost wages, the expectation is that your surrogate and her partner are compensated for the time that they have to take off based on pregnancy. So that's for cycling and transfer, that's for bed rest, that's for appointments, and then it's for birth and postpartum. And typically there's also a housekeeping allowance that could be starting automatically at 28 weeks through a period of time postpartum. It could be only on bed rest. It varies.
Okay, so insurance is next. This is everybody's favorite topic, right? So there's 3 types of insurance you need to think about. First, you have life insurance or accidental death insurance. This is a policy specifically written for the surrogate should something happen to her during the term of the pregnancy. It's a very small price in the grand scheme of things to pay, and it actually releases the intended parents from a lawsuit from the surrogate's family, so this is well worth every penny. Next, you have the surrogate's insurance. She's going to either have insurance through her employer or through her partner's employer, or you might be asked to pay for a policy for her. Make sure that you talk to the agency and your lawyer about whether or not she has insurance and if it's adequate, because there's only certain times of year you can buy insurance now. So we want to make sure that that's in place. Now, if your surrogate resides in California, it is required by law that an attorney or a broker review the insurance policy. So that's a new change in the law this year, so make sure that you have that done. And then finally, there's insurance for the child. If you reside in the United States or you otherwise have insurance of your own that works in the United States, you can just simply add your child to your policy, but make sure that you talk to your insurance provider about how to do that and how to do it properly. Your attorney should be able to help you with that as well. If you need to purchase insurance for the child, you can do that and in a separate policy, or you can also perhaps negotiate a cash discount with the hospital if that turns out to be more financially sound for you. Yeah, please.
I want to add a note on insurance. Those of you that are international, I apologize. Our system is very complicated, so make sure you talk to your agencies about this. There is something called open enrollment. And open enrollment is the only time of the year that you can get insurance if you don't already have it, or if your surrogate has an insurance policy that has a surrogacy exclusion. Open enrollment runs from November 1st through January 31st.
It's been extended every year, and we anticipate that will continue to happen, but I wouldn't count on it.
So, not to put a bunch of time pressure on you, but what you need to know about this is that you're about to enter that open enrollment period. And so most surrogates, I'm seeing less than half actually have insurance that covers surrogacy. And so you're going to want to match as soon as you relatively can so that you have time to get an insurance policy in place for your surrogate. So that time frame is November 1st through January 31st, and there might be a little wiggle room in there.
Yes, now is absolutely the ideal time to move forward because of that. Okay, parentage proceedings. So the legal costs started with the surrogacy contract. Then once you're confirmed pregnant, there's going to be a court order that is done either prior to or after the birth, depending on where your surrogate resides. In California, we can get them prior to birth. Other states, you can only get them after birth. So again, make sure that you retain a good professional in the state where your surrogate resides, who can really guide you through the process, tell you what to expect. Financially, you're going to see two types of parentage proceedings costs. You're going to see the professional costs for the lawyer, and this is going to be for them to draft court paperwork, perhaps make a court appearance on your behalf, obtain the court order. Secondly, you're going to see court costs. These are not professional costs paid to a lawyer. These are costs paid directly to a court. So you're going to see these somewhere between $2,500 and $7,000. They're going to range, but make sure you have a clear understanding from your lawyer of what to expect. Oh, it's me again. All right, next we have the bucket of IVF costs. You're going to see a huge range here. This is going to come directly from your clinic. And a lot of clinics are offering these great packages where everything's included. Some of them are unlimited transfer packages until you have a live birth. So talk to your clinic about the different things they offer so that you can find what works in your budget. But you should see ranges anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000 is very normal, and that's for clinics inside California and outside California.
Surrogate screening. So there is a kind of a realistic range for surrogate screening. The psychological evaluation is usually on the surrogate and her partner. That varies. It might be just the surrogate depending on what the state's expectations are or the clinic's expectations are. You can usually plan for about $800 to $1,000 for that. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's a little bit more. And then the medical screening portion, you can realistically count on $2,000. It's often less than that, but it's not usually a lot more than that. It is not something that will be covered by the surrogate's insurance. That's an expense to the intended parents. Psychological support. Again, this is a variation by clinic. So it might be that they have monthly support group meetings where the surrogate comes to the agency and meets in person. It could be that she sees a counselor on her own. It might be that she never has a counselor or a support group meeting. Your agency will give you their expectation. I would say in most cases you can budget between $1,200 and $2,000 if it's not already part of your agency fee. Travel. This is going to vary greatly. I can't even give you a number. It depends on whether your surrogate and your donor are where you are. It depends if they're where your clinic is. It depends how far you're traveling to the clinic, to your surrogate, how many visits you make. This is going to be a huge variation. And I can't even give you an actual budget on that. But build it in.
I bet your agency can give you a really good idea of what to expect once you've chosen the surrogate and once you've chosen the donor. I usually see at least $1,000 for travel, even if they're sort of local, because people will get like a food allowance and things like that. And gosh, it could probably even go up to $5,000 to $10,000 depending on locations.
So total costs. What I have seen is that if you plan for $100,000 to $120,000, you are probably well prepared. This is going to change depending on whether you're international, depending on what state you're in, that sort of thing. But if you have an uncomplicated pregnancy with a donor that goes as we expect, $100,000 to $120,000 is realistic. If you have a complicated scenario where there's bed rest and lost wages and maybe an early birth, it's going to start bouncing it up. And I can say, I mean, I've seen it go up to $160,000 to $180,000 depending on the scenario. So what's important about that is that as you're going through the process and making choices, you're evaluating what are my resources. So if you have fairly unlimited resources and you're feeling confident about it, maybe you choose 2 surrogates, maybe you roll the dice for multiples, maybe, there's a lot of variation there. But if you are realistically wanting a singleton pregnancy with a donor and it all goes smoothly, I think 100 to 120 is fair.
Okay, so here's some key advice. Definitely do your research and talk to other professionals. Go to websites like All Things Surrogacy that talk about different types of agencies and how other people who have used those agencies and used those clinics and used those, that sort of stuff really matters, because what's really difficult in this journey is that anybody can look amazing online and you don't necessarily know who you can trust. So talk to other professionals and really get a good gauge on those types of things. I'm not the right lawyer for everybody. You're not the right agency for everybody. And we all get that. So feel free to ask for referrals to other professionals. I believe that everybody in this room wants you to have the best journey you can have, even if that's not with that professional. Next, ask for costs from everybody. This is something you touched on in the beginning, and it was perfect, because there's costs that are definite. And then there's costs that can kind of go like this. So talk to the professionals and say, okay, what are my definite ones, and where can this go wrong? Or where can this cost me more? Where have you seen it cost people more? Ask them those types of questions. Go with your gut. You will know in your heart when you meet the right surrogate. You will know when you meet the right agency. You will know when you meet the right lawyer. Go with your feelings. Go with your gut. That's really honestly one of the best pieces of advice you can use in this field. It's you.
Okay, extra costs. So there's that general overview of what we gave. Those are expenses almost everybody will experience. These are the extra costs that you may or may not experience, but you probably want to build into your budget as a just in case. It's always better to pad your budget with a little bit extra than not quite enough. So if your surrogate miscarries or has multiple hospital admissions, there are going to be extra costs associated with that. Some of that's going to be covered by her insurance. There will be co-pays. Some of it may not be covered by insurance, depending on when it happens in the cycle. It's important to note that you are responsible for all of the medical costs up to a confirmed pregnancy. Once she's released from your reproductive endocrinologist, at that point her insurance usually kicks in, but it's very rare to have surrogate insurance, health insurance, that will cover any of the IVF getting pregnant process. If your cycle is delayed, that will definitely be an additional cost, because you'll have another round of cycle meds, which you're responsible for, not for insurance. You'll also probably have extra ultrasounds. You'll have extra testing that needs to be done. And cycle delays don't happen all of the time, but it's a reality. It happens more than we like to think. So just know, the more moving parts you have, the more potential delays there are. So add a little bit extra for any of those delays. If your surrogate does not get pregnant, then there will be another cycle to go through, and so that's going to be additional expense. it's really nice to think she's going to get pregnant the first time. It doesn't always happen. That's a reality. And so just know that. Let's see. First trimester pregnancy monitoring. A lot of this is going to be covered by her OB, but all of the ultrasounds up through 7 weeks, up through 11 weeks, up through 12 weeks, depending on what your clinic's process is, those are your responsibility. And so you can count on at least 2 ultrasounds. You can count on all of the blood work that's associated with that. And then once she's released to the obstetrician, at that point, if she has health insurance, it'll kick in. Complications during pregnancy. This is FDA testing is referring to the genetic material. So that would be testing for the sperm donor and for the egg donor, which in many cases are the actual intended parents. And so there are rounds of testing that's required by the FDA to make sure that everything's healthy. Okay, complications during pregnancy, bed rest, that's going to cause extra costs, lost wages, that sort of thing. C-sections have an additional fee. And then with a preterm delivery, you're looking at cost to you for the care for your infant.
Okay. There's some definite costs like we discussed. These are going to be your agency fees, your surrogate fees, the legal costs, life insurance, and like we've discussed, these are going to range, but they're definite and they're going to be in every case. There's also going to be potential costs. I'll give everybody a second to finish taking a picture. You guys can always come talk to us about these too, by the way, if you have questions. And then there's potential costs. These are the things that may or may not happen. But again, once you're matched with a surrogate mom and we kind of get an idea and a sense of your journey, we'll have a much better idea of what you should anticipate. And your costs will begin to become much more definite. And then you can really take those and decide what's going to be, where it can go out of control so that you can control that too. I think that's everything. We wanted to take a couple questions if we have time. How much time do we have? Yeah? Anyone? Come on, no questions about money? Yes. It is. Oh, so the question up here was, what if there's no donor fee? So perhaps if they didn't find a donor through an agency, or maybe a friend or family member's acting as a donor?
Or if it's the intended mother.
Yes. Then you're probably looking at the lower end of the 100 to the 120. Again, this is just an estimate. Yes. Okay. So the question was securing financing. Do you want to handle this one? There's options.
Why don't you take it?
Okay, sure. So there are grants available. There's funding available. There's companies who are designed specifically to give loans for surrogacy. That you kind of have to do a little bit of research. I don't have a lot of clients who actually use these, so I don't have feedback on how it's actually worked for people. But I know there's at least 3 companies out there. I believe Growing Generations has a funding program, and they have on their website a link to the company that does it as well.
I have a couple of clients that have used those low interest loans specifically for IVF, and they've had good experiences with them. They're not terribly difficult to get. They do have a low interest rate. They're usually for up to about $40,000.
And there are companies.
I'm hearing between 2 and 4%.
Yes. Right. So if an agency is the one, in my opinion, who's responsible for giving a 1099 to a surrogate or a donor if they feel that it's the responsibility to pay taxes on that. There is a trust account that needs to be set up in California. This is required by law, but not in other states.
Correct.
Which is, perhaps it should be everywhere.
It should be.
So that the money is set aside and that the clients know the surrogate is protected and that their money is protected. So 1099 is the responsibility of the agency, honestly. And if, what do you mean? Like, if they get a surrogate online, then that would be the responsibility of the parties. Well, I'm not a tax attorney and I cannot give you tax advice, but it would be the responsibility of the parties to speak to their own tax professional about any liability they may have. That would be the intended parents or the surrogate or the donor. There is a IRS court case out there that establishes that donor fees are taxable.
That's not a very satisfying answer. I know it's not. This is one
It's
of those.
such a lawyer answer, huh?
It is a lawyer answer. This is one of those things that's evolving and we're watching. So different agencies and different individuals are still doing different things. There isn't a, this is what everybody's doing. That's not much more of a satisfying answer.
When are you getting your law degree? Because that sounded perfect. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So yeah, look, you can talk to individual providers here about their costs, and as mentioned, Growing Generations, for example, has their own in-house loan program for people who want a short-term loan over 3 or 4 years, and there are other loan providers out there for people who want loans. I think the Growing Generations one covers larger amounts. Other providers will only cover maybe 40,000 or so.